What's going on, guys? Last week I asked you all to vote on which video should come out next between what if Madara became the second Hokage and what if Naruto married Sakura. The votes are in and you all chose what if Madara was the second Hokage. Just as a quick reminder, in the future, in order to vote for videos, click on the info cards in the upper right hand corner. Now, with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. What if Madara became the second Hokage? How would the Naruto story change? Would it be for better or would it be for worse? Looking back at the Naruto series, there are two moments in which Madara could have become the Hokage, the first of which I've already covered in another video, what if Madara became the first Hokage. So that obviously leaves us with what if Madara became the second Hokage. In chapter 625, Hashirama had asked Madara to become the first Hokage, but later on, Madara overheard Tobirama warn his brother that people would not follow Madara as Hokage. This led to the conversation between the two in the very next chapter, where Hashirama begs Madara to stay in the village as his advisor and then become the second Hokage. And this is where this video will start off. As we all know, originally, Madara chose to leave the village and then come back to fight Hashirama with the Kyuubi in tow. However, in this scenario, seeing his rival and his close friend beg for him to stay in the village would make Madara go against his gut and choose to stay in the village. Since Madara had already read the tablet in the Uchiha shrine, which we all know was changed by Zetsu, the seeds for him unknowingly reviving Kaguya would already be planted. With that being said, by staying in the village and seeing firsthand how peaceful things would have become, Madara might have found himself in a situation where his faith in the plan written on the tablet would begin to waver. When Hashirama spoke to Sasuke, he told him that after Madara left the village, he left before he could watch the young children in the village grow up over the course of many years, where they lived in a time of peace without worrying about war, and grew old enough to enjoy the taste of adult beverages. By staying in the village, Madara would likely find himself settling down, just as his rival Hashirama did, which means that we could very well see Hashirama's rival Madara have a child and potentially a young grandchild like Hashirama did in Tsunade. Assuming that this does happen, I believe having a family might be enough to make Madara look past the distrust of the villagers, and he would then look past his own distrust with Hashirama's brother Tobirama. Though, as the years pass, I believe that the tension between the two would continue to rise as the rivalry would be reignited when Hashirama undoubtedly begins thinking of naming one of them to be the next Hokage, with Madara being the favorite due to his promise to him years ago. However, as we all know, the open conflict between the nations would strike the Naruto verse. Madara would take a very similar stance as Tobirama when it came to offering the tailed beast to the other nations as a token of peace. Though, unlike Hashirama's brother Tobirama, Madara would be against giving the other villages the tailed beast altogether, whereas Tobirama wanted his brother to make the other villages pay for the tailed beast in Hashirama's care. Since Madara would likely think back to what he read on the tablet, part of him would be tempted by the idea of taking control of the One Tails, which would be currently sealed away in the Hidden Sand village. Though, out of respect for Hashirama, he would bury those desires, at least for the time being. Unfortunately, war would still break out in the Narutoverse. By the time that Kakuzu tries to assassinate Hashirama, a major change would likely occur. With Madara alive, fighting on behalf of the Hidden Leaf village, this increases the chances of him being near Hashirama when Kakuzu attacks. According to the first data book, Kakuzu barely escaped their battle alive, which means that Hashirama either took mercy on Kakuzu or he left him for dead. If Madara was anywhere near that battlefield, I have no reason to believe that he wouldn't act in the same manner that Kakashi did when Naruto defeated Kakuzu. Madara would go to the aftermath of the battle to check behind Hashirama, where he would either find a half-dead Kakuzu and kill him, or he would track him down to kill him for his actions. This would mean that Kakuzu never lives long enough to steal the forbidden scrolls of his village and never join the Akatsuki. Madara being in the village would mean that Hashirama's death would be put off for some time, but it would still eventually happen due to the circumstances of his death. A very strong argument can be made that Madara having the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and Hashirama at full power would be enough to end any type of conflict of war. Though it should be worth noting that not all ninja during this time period were fodder. The fact that Hashirama fought so many battles that he was eventually injured enough that he died is proof of this. And it should be noted noted that in the Naruto verse, it isn't always about power, but instead about strategy and skill when it comes to fighting an opponent. Originally, with his dying breath, Hashirama made Tobirama the second Hokage and made him promise not to mistreat the Uchiha clan. In this scenario, Madara would be named the second Hokage. With Madara finally being named the Hokage, a few major changes would occur. First, there is no guarantee that Madara would go on to establish the Chunin exam system like Tobirama did. This becomes even less likely if Tobirama himself makes the suggestion, given the two would have open tension between them. This would be even less likely to happen if Madara decides not to make Tobirama one of his advisors. Assuming that Madara does make Tobirama his advisor, simply for the sake of keeping peace in the village, it could get very interesting. The Chunin exams and the military police force are two of the biggest parts of Tobirama's legacy as Hokage. In this scenario, if Tobirama were to suggest both, I could see Madara not granting both suggestions just to spite Tobirama, even if he did agree with what Tobirama suggested. I could also see Tobirama being outraged when Madara decides to make the Senju clan the leaders of the police force, which would be a poetic twist of fate given the fact that Madara had his clan made the military police force after he left by Hashirama Senju. Also, with Hashirama being gone, the First Shinobi World War would still be raging on. The seeds planted by Black Zetsu would likely begin to bloom at last. Life in the village on a Madara Uchiha would be much different than it was on a Hashirama Senju. Hashirama, as we all know, was way more easygoing, whereas Madara would rule in a more militarian way. It's important to remember that Madara Uchiha lost all of his siblings in the countless wars that he fought as a child, which would make him rule with the Iron Fist, doing so in the name of keeping the village youth, which may include his own grandchild, safe. Madara already wasn't trusted by the villagers, and Hashirama not being there to serve as a buffer would cause tension to rise even higher. However, with the Uchiha clan now in a position of prominence, it would place Tobirama Senju in a very difficult situation. Does he act as Madara did originally and challenge the Hokage to a duel? It is very important to note that it has been shown on quite a few times that Tobirama isn't above going against his brother when it comes to making decisions, especially when it comes to the welfare of his clan and the village. In this scenario, the Senju would be riled up over being named the military police force and having an Uchiha as their Hokage, and Madara would have a very drastically different style than what they're used to under Hashirama. This would lead to Tobirama eventually challenging Madara to a duel. Despite the fact that they're in the midst of a war, the two of them would likely do battle in what we now know as the Final Valley. The fight between the two would be very interesting once you factor in Mito Uzumaki, the wife of Hashirama and the first Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Originally, Mito took control of the Kyuubi from Madara and sealed it inside of her so she could lend her strength to Hashirama in order to help him defeat Madara. If Mito did indeed become the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, we could see a scenario where Tobirama enlists her help to help him fight Madara. The Final Valley battle between Madara and Mito and Tobirama would likely be something that is so intense that it would be passed down for generations to come. It's also very likely that Madara could enlist the help of his son if he has a Mangekyo Sharingan. However, I could also see a scenario where Madara gives into his own hubris and challenges the two of them alone because Madara would believe he's strong enough to defeat them all without any help. Madara was able to fight evenly with Hashirama, who had Sage Mode and was much stronger than Tobirama. As we all know, the gap in power between Tobirama and Hashirama was immense, so much so that when they were reanimated, although not at full strength, Hashirama simply molding his chakra was enough to make Tobirama and the other reanimated Hokage shit themselves. With Madara being more skilled and all too aware of the Flying Raijin Jutsu and more powerful, the fight would be so one-sided that it would still go on to be talked about for generations to come. This would present us with two outcomes. Outcome number one, the combined efforts of Tobirama and Mito are finally enough to bring down Madara Uchiha. As we all know, fights in Naruto are not decided by power, but are also decided by strategy, skill, timing, and a little bit of luck. If Tobirama were to combat Madara, he would have enough prep time to come up with a plan in order to defeat him, especially if he had Mito using the Kyuubi's power to offset the drastic difference between the two. It should also be noted that Madara was more than skilled enough that if he did have to fight Mito and Tobirama, that he could do so, but he would also have his guard let down. And if Mito is strong enough that she's able to take control of the Kyuubi from Madara and fight alongside Hashirama as she did originally, then she might be able to overcome the effects of the Mangekyo Sharingan on the Kyuubi. It should also be noted that Tobirama's strategy would likely include the Edo Tensei, which would allow him to use Dead Ninja repeatedly to blow themselves up as they attack Madara Uchiha. It also opens the door for Tobirama to reanimate Hashirama. To add further insult to injury, if for some reason Tobirama went to the grave of the dead brother of Madara who he killed, he would be able to revive him as well and cause Madara to become enraged at the sight of his dead brother. In scenario 2, which is the one I believe is the most likely, Madara not only would overcome any battle strategies that Tobirama used, but after he killed Tobirama, he would go on to extract the Kyuubi from Mito Uzumaki and place the Kyuubi under his control. With Madara being on a whole different level of power, I see no way that Tobirama will be able to win. There's only so much teleporting that Tobirama can do when faced with a perfect Susanoo. Going further down the scenario, the Senju clan would become oppressed like the Uchiha were in the original story. However, after Madara ends the First Shinobi World War, he would demand that the other nations hand over the tailed beasts and likely take them back by force if need be. The purpose would be for his Infinite Tsukiyomi plan, which he wouldn't be able to carry out yet, but we also know that Madara would eventually awaken his Rinnegan near death. It's also worth noting that since he is in close proximity to Hashirama for a very long time, it would be possible for him to steal his DNA without having to bite off a chunk of Hashirama's flesh. Now, this is where things get really interesting. We very well could see a scenario where Madara Uchiha rules over all 5 nations by having all 9 tailed beasts under his control. The likely scenario is that after this happens, that Madara names his son as the next Hokage, and we see a long tradition of Uchiha ruling over not only the Hidden Leaf Village but the other 5 nations as well. While characters like Danzo would possess an increased hatred for the Uchiha, as long as Madara Uchiha is alive, they would not be able to act in open opposition without fear of death. At some point during all of this, Madara would awaken his Rinnegan near death, which gives him several options. Madara wouldn't have to resort to decades of scheming in order to revive himself to carry out the Infinite Tsukiyomi plan. He could simply enlist the aid of his son or grandchild in order to revive him. Either of these shinobi could kidnap a random ninja and place them under a genjutsu. After they take Madara's Rinnegan and force them to use the Rinne Rebirth Jutsu to bring back Madara to life, and then transport the Rinnegan back into Madara's eye. This would lead to the sealing of all 9 tailed beasts and the completion of the Infinite Tsukiyomi. It would also likely lead to the revival of Kaguya. However, it is worth noting that that would depend on whether or not Madara decides to absorb the God Tree. It would open up the door for Zetsu to force Madara to revive Kaguya. If this isn't the case, and Madara simply uses the Genjutsu to achieve a peaceful world, then the series as we know would come to an end, and it would do so much sooner, which ironically means that Naruto Uzumaki would never bust forward from the nuts of the genius Minato, and he would likely never get to use his almighty Talk no Jutsu on Obito. Also, Sasuke Uchiha would never nearly kill Sakura and turn her into a single mother and leave her with a mortgage that she would have to pay for a house after she destroys it. Well guys, that's it for my What If today. Like I told you all in What If Madara was the first Hokage, there are some very drastic differences, Which version of Madara being the Hokage did you guys enjoy more, the first version or the second? Let me know if you want to see another What If in the future, and if you disagree with my assessment that Tobirama couldn't have beaten Madara under these circumstances. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Have an awesome day.